Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Inside Scoop. I'm Stephanie Hoover, your host, and I'm here with my longtime Zoom pal, Jamie Kress from Sensormatic. How are you, Jamie?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. So, are you relieved that your big meeting was done? Are you like recovery phase at this point?
Yes, I am relieved. A lot of work went into it, but it was a great event, and I think I was back a day when we all started planning for NRF in January. So
Yeah,
no rest for the weary.
it never ends. It never ends. So, Jamie, you and I are going to talk about that event, which I think is awesome, and it's a great event. So this year you guys had it in Bentonville.
Yes.
Is that the first year you've done it in Bentonville?
It is. It is. We the first year we had it in our offices in Boca, and then we moved to the Auburn RFID lab, which is a great venue as we grew. This year it happened to coincide with the opening of our new Bentonville Center of Excellence, which we just built and opened in Bentonville. So we decided to take advantage of that and bring our customers down there.
Awesome. How big is that facility?
In terms of square footage, I'm not exactly sure. It was designed to be a lab. I mean, certainly it has helped us out with our large customer down there in Bentonville, but it was designed to be a lab where we can look at different technologies with any of our customers, bring them in, test out their use cases, test out new technologies, test corner cases of ways they might be not leveraging our solutions today that they might want to. And it's whether it's putting in fixed infrastructure or trying different tag scenarios, you name it. And it was designed to be flexible and to accommodate really the needs of any of our customers as we're looking at new technologies.
Awesome. So I think I saw some images on LinkedIn. You guys have like a mock-up of a storeroom. Is there a sales floor as well?
Yeah, so it could be configured in many different ways. So certainly we have the large conference room where we can meet with customers and kind of talk about what they're trying to accomplish. We have some private workspace as well, and then we have sales floor areas. We have transition areas between, say, back of house and front of house. We have a supply chain receiving area where we can back up a trailer and replicate receivings of goods on conveyors. Really almost any way you need to test for a use case in the retail supply chain, we can accommodate it in the facility.
Awesome. And so what is the goal of the meeting? Is it to bring in the retailers to exchange ideas, talk about real world scenarios?
Yeah, great question. So when I first started, it was a conversation about what's possible. And then it evolved over the years to talk about how are each of them utilizing what I'll call sensors with smart exits to help go after the red shoppers, go after the bad guys. And what I've found in these meetings, because I've been part of users groups before and I've been part of this meeting, is there's a common enemy in this particular case when you're dealing with loss prevention. We all the retailers want to work together and leverage what each of them are doing because it makes us all stronger against that common enemy, which is kind of fun. When you're talking about other use cases and you're talking about the traditional inventory side of RFID, some of those use cases give a retailer a competitive advantage, and they might not be as open to sharing what those competitive advantages are. But when it comes to loss prevention use cases, people really want to come together and share ideas. So we designed it so that it was certainly not them listening to Sensormatic the entire time. We will bring up concepts for discussion, but most of the presentations are by retailers about their experiences, about their pilots, about their challenges, about ways they're overcoming those challenges. Most of the time it's with using our solution. Sometimes it's using a combination of other solutions. So we really, really try to keep it about it's by retailers and for retailers, and we are really the facilitators of that conversation.
What I've loved in attending those types of meetings in the past is when retailers in the room and they're talking, and then somebody says, "Well, we're doing this." They think everyone else is doing it. They have no
Yeah.
idea, but because they're having that synergy in their meeting and they're having open discussion, all of a sudden it's like, "Oh my gosh, okay, why isn't everyone doing this?" Those are my favorite moments in those meetings.
Yeah, and I think there's with RFID use cases, what's also interesting is everybody assumes that everybody else is a little further along. And it's
Yeah.
never the case. I mean, everybody is using it a little bit differently. And what's fun for me, and you kind of just alluded to it, is a retailer will raise their hand and say, well, here's how we're tackling that problem. And you see everybody else scribbling down, oh, I hadn't even thought about using it for that particular purpose.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting to watch those new ideas formulate.
So what were some of the common things that you heard? Did you hear some sort of unique use cases or common themes that came
Yeah,
forward?
I did think about this before talking today, so forgive me as I glance down at my notes. But I think one of the themes that came out loud and clear is that performance of the infrastructure or the hardware that you're putting in place is really, really important. And they're all not the same. One reader is not the same as another reader, as another reader.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel very strongly, and our customers feel strongly, that going for the greatest performance leads to the most accuracy at the exit. And why that's important, and what came out over and over again over the week, was that accuracy then leads to more efficiency by the investigators. And if the investigators are more efficient, that improves your ROI. So looking at this story of the more performance you can get, which equals higher accuracy, is going to make those investigators more efficient. And that trend or that discussion happened over and over throughout the couple of days. Was our investigators using RFID data can take a case that used to take 6 months to a year down to a matter of weeks. And so trying to make the investigators more successful in a limited amount of time they have is really critical. So performance was key. We heard a lot about the importance of looking at the data from fence locations. We've discussed this before.
Yeah.
And we took it to the next level this time and talked about what is the flow of shrink across the geography. Can we see the flow of shrink from a fence location? Where do we see that those items originated from? We're going to be talking a little bit more about this at NRF as well. But the flow of shrink and then the need for retailers to collaborate becomes really important, because we go in these fence locations and we're going to find merchandise from a wide variety of retailers, and then we can collaborate, and then we can make larger investigative packages to go after. So collaboration and the flow of shrink was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And then I think we've talked about this every year, but every year it kind of comes up again, and that's about deterrence versus intelligence. So deterrence was always the loss prevention game. So it's, you put up pedestals at the exit, you put on hard tags, and that did a great job of stopping, when someone comes in the front door. With ORC, those hard tags aren't necessarily stopping anybody. And so putting in intelligence into the solution so that the investigators can then go after those ORC bans, that's really when you use intelligence to really have a full picture. So the perfect world is deterrence plus the intelligence gives you the best chance of going after those larger ORC bans. So, and that was reiterated throughout. And we had, again, this year, we've talked about, does RFID in your stores, which a lot of people are source tagging now, does that mean you no longer need the hard tag? And I think the answer is different for every retailer. It can allow you to change the mix of what you hard tag in your store. But the retailer does not need to make a tough decision. They don't have to say, well, I'm doing RFID for inventory purposes, I guess I don't need that hard tag anymore. Hard tag is a really successful tool. You can hard tag just with RFID. You can hard tag with the traditional AM or RF technologies, or a combination of all of those things. It serves its purpose really well. And you got to build a total solution that's comprised of both deterrence and the intelligence.
Yeah, you and I could have a whole podcast and talk about the kind of philosophy behind to tag or not to tag,
Right, for sure.
It's a whole other topic. Well, that is awesome to hear. The retailers, it sounds like they were collaborating and sharing stories. So were they sharing like real world like cases and stories that have happened in their locations?
Yeah, they were. What was interesting is last year at our event, there was a large investigation of a fence location that many of the retailers in the room were a part of. And so they collaborated live together in the room and talked about the importance of sharing that data, which then led to a conversation about how do we broaden this? Where does everybody have a role in the collaboration? Where should this data reside, and how can we all take advantage of it? And there weren't necessarily answers that came out of that, but there was a lot of discussion about how do we work together more carefully or more closely in the future to again make these investigations happen faster, work more closely with law enforcement, local law enforcement, national law enforcement. That was a pretty significant conversation over the 2 days.
Nice. And not to get in the weeds, but my brain's always going a million miles an hour. Like, how are they collaborating? So let's say I'm retailer A and retailer B, and they both have your solution. Are they just saying, "Hey, I'm working on this case, and we saw your tags"? Like, how would they collaborate on a case?
It really varies. More often
Okay.
than not, a retailer would go into a fence location. They would see merchandise from a retailer that the other retailer knows that we work with. And so sometimes they'll contact us and say, we know that there's tag merchandise from XYZ retailer. We'd like to contact them, and
Mhm.
we'd like to share data. And then we kind of work as a facilitator between those two and say, we want to help. How can we help? So it really varies how they contact us, but more often than not, the same retailers and the same loss prevention teams are going after these fencing locations, and they know if they see, Victoria's Secret, that they're one of our customers, and so they would want to contact us.
Nice, nice. So as I was kind of prepping for our podcast, I was thinking about things that used to be like the bane of my existence in LP. And I just know that fitting rooms literally is just like no man's land. Sort of, once the bad guys go in there, they kind of have just carte blanche to do whatever they want. Were there any solutions that the retailers discussed for fitting rooms?
Yes, fitting rooms came up a lot.
Oh, nice.
Well, one, it became a very, very basic use case is you can go in, you'll find tags shoved behind the mirrors. I'm sure you saw those and you
Oh,
collect
yeah.
those. One of our customers actually showed a picture as part of his presentation and showed piles and piles of tags that have been torn off merchandise and they found behind the mirrors. And one of the things we do is we allow them to count those tags and
Mhm.
count them into lost or stolen merchandise. So you now know that it's stolen merchandise. But what we also do is we started talking this year about, we call it smart exit, but really it's a smart transition. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the exit of the store. It could be a transition within a fitting room or into or out of a fitting room or a back door or at the distribution center. And so we talked a lot about that. So knowing that the last known read location of a stolen item was the fitting room is fantastic data. And you start to trend that over time, and you see that when you find these stolen items or you see these items that have left, and the last known location is fitting room, and then you can tie that to time of day. Well, now you can make sure that you are staffing around that fitting room during those high shrink hours.
Mhm.
And we talked a lot about that as well as is understanding where shrink is occurring, not just outside when I talked about the flow of shrink once it leaves the store, but also the flow of shrink in the store. And fitting rooms are probably the main culprit right there.
Yeah. Is anyone testing or thinking about doing something like an RFID reader that counts the items as they're entering the fitting room and announces to the customer, sort of like a preventive measure, like, "Hey, thanks for coming into the fitting room. You've got 5 items," and maybe deter some theft that way?
Yeah, there are people who are doing that, and some is really just looking at, I haven't heard someone use the vocal idea that you had, which I think is a good one.
Mhm.
There's so much noise in the stores, but
Yeah.
public view monitors for years have been a successful deterrent at the exit. Having a fitting room public view monitor that you just walked into the fitting room with 8 items, and it sure looks like you walked out with 8, but you're only carrying one T-shirt. What does that mean to all those tags? So having
Yeah.
that type of account is certainly that's deployable today, but I don't know a lot of people who are doing that yet.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about ways to prevent it before it even happens in there because man, it really was frustrating finding all those torn tags behind the mirrors and
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
drives you
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yep.
So I know within your meeting, you talked about inventory distortion. Can you give me a little bit more information about that?
Yeah, this goes way back to the early Macy's days, right? The
Mhm.
frozen inventory, inventory distortion, because you think you know what you have in the store, but you don't. And it really keeps going back to that. So being able to provide the retailers with visibility to what they have in the 4 walls of the store is half the goal. You make them more successful that way. Um, where inventory distortion or being able to replenish into what's been stolen becomes a really interesting conversation.
And when I talk about smart exits, one of the first things I say to retailers is there's a lot you can do with this data. But first and foremost, the most simple thing you can do is know immediately the following day after a bulk theft, that you need to replenish into those items immediately to have those available for sale. We actually talked a lot about the ROI for shrink. And I think the industry is really hungry for, how do I justify the investment in these tools? And what's interesting about that example I just gave you, replenishing into shrink, is now you have a sales uplift associated with shrink, because you're not just saying, I know what left, let's go ahead and replenish back into those. When you replenish back into those, it could be a high fashion item that you're only going to hold in your stores for a matter of weeks. If you can get that back on the floor and make sure you're selling those, that's also a sales lift. That's not just a preventative measure. So I think in inventory distortion, and always working towards having as accurate of inventory as you can, and making sure you have the products on the shelves for your key shoppers, is the critical component.
Absolutely. So in talking about all these different use cases, is there a place where AI came into the conversation?
If I had a penny for every time someone said AI, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about it more in the concept of machine learning, and I'm learning about this as we go as well. Machine learning has a tremendous impact on loss prevention technologies. I mean, we know that once we start feeding our systems with loss events, and being able to let the machine learn that, we're seeing trends happen, and what is our confidence score? We built into our solution a confidence level, so that once we look at a theft event, we have a higher and higher confidence level that it was an actual theft event, as opposed to a miscellaneous read at the door that, oh, that should have been an omni-channel sale, that was okay to leave. So leveraging machine learning as a subset of our artificial intelligence was a significant conversation. And I think it's going to make all of us better at investigating these cases, because it's going to, again, it gets back to efficiency. It'll make us more efficient. So when the investigator has that potential loss event in front of them, not only are they making that case shorter in duration, but they don't even have to go through the same due diligence, because they have a much higher confidence score to say, oh, my system is telling me this is a very, very high confidence, this is a loss event. So you can go after those high confidence loss events as opposed to the low confidence loss events.
So we talk a lot about, RFID tag technologies and sort of, pushing the limits. So were there concerns that came up at the meeting about pushing the limits of their legacy infrastructure? Or are the new tag technologies playing well with legacy infrastructure?
Yeah.
What are the challenges?
We did talk a lot about the advent of new tags, the performance of new tags, new tag form factors. We have a new seam tag that you can sew into the seam of garments, which is going to be a game changer. I think that all of these technologies can play well together. We make sure that we are backwards compatible with the existing tags that are in the environment. So even while a retailer wants to move to new, Gen 2X tags, for example, you can still have the tags that you have in your store still performing really well, just as they do today. So we try to take the fear out of retailers that the industry is evolving, and that shouldn't scare retailers. Don't be scared that it's evolving. I don't want to buy something that's going to evolve in a year and not be effective. What you're buying today will certainly be effective tomorrow. But there are new technologies retailers can take advantage of that will make them even more accurate and higher performing today, like Gen 2X solutions that Impinj puts to the market that we sell almost exclusively. We feel very strongly that when you have a Gen 2X reader with a Gen 2X tag, and you can see an improved read rate because of that, that again makes the retailer's data more efficient, more accurate. So there was a lot of conversation about those advances, and we're really confident that that's going to make the solutions we deploy more effective.
In your experience, do you feel like most of the retailers are moving more to open architecture and away from these closed systems? And is that helping? I mean, I'm sure it's helping. It's a dumb question, but are you sensing that they're moving more towards open architecture?
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it really depends on the retailer. The answer to your question is yes. I mean, that open architecture and the collaboration that's required across different retailers or even within the retailer environment is important. And a lot of retailers are building out new BI tools that are really amazing that can pull from different systems and within the retail enterprise to give fantastic insights into loss and inventory accuracy, total retail shrink, all of those types of things. So I think the open architecture is interesting. I think another conversation, you didn't ask me this, but I'll give you my opinion on this one other topic, is what we're finding is there are so many demands on the IT organizations today in these retailers. Let's get AI, let's get a new ERP, a new POS. And it's becoming more evident that the loss prevention leaders in these retail environments need a strong voice at that same table. And typically, I think most of the loss prevention leaders, while they certainly have a seat at the table, I'm not saying that, but they historically have not been needing as much impact from the IT organization. So that is a trend that we see changing. Is the LP leaders will need to become closer and closer partners with the IT leaders, because there are some solutions that LP will be able to deploy into retail that aren't just about deterrence nowadays. Now it's about amazing data that's going to help the entire retail organization. And I personally think, and I'm a little, it's obvious that I would say this, but I think moving the priority of those LP tools, IT tools, up the stack is going to be really important this coming year.
Absolutely. I know you and I have talked about total retail loss before, and even at our summit, which we just had a couple of weeks ago, it was a big topic that LP leaders do have a seat at the table. And I think in the past we used to get shut out when these IT conversations were happening, but I think it's more and more we're involved, and I think that is the correct direction to go.
And now you have the proof to show it. Like before, it was, I want to be at the table because these things are happening in the stores. And before, you would only have the data of, well, I know how many, you might even know, I know how many alarm events I have in my store. Well, how many things did you lose? Well, I don't know how many things I lost, but I had a lot of alarms going off that day. And now you can say, I had 20 alarms go off today. I had this was my total loss by every item that went out the door. Here's the trend information about when that's happening. So now we're giving so much fantastic data that the LP leaders can say, here is why I need investment in my infrastructure, because now I can give you significant data that not only helps the loss prevention side of our business, but helps store ops and helps customer experience and customer service and all those things.
Yeah, I think we were really operating under loss reaction in the past, and I think we're truly moving towards loss prevention in the current environment. And then, definitely the technologies that you guys are working on are helping with that. Anything else from the meeting that you thought was an aha moment or that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think the one thing I will say, and I was talking with a colleague of mine before I joined you just now, is what we're finding is that these retailers prefer not to have a single purchase, a single purpose for their spend. And what's nice about RFID is there might have been an investment in the business on tags, on inventory accuracy, and to now give one more use case that has a tremendous benefit is really, really interesting. So, and you and I've talked about this before on several podcasts, is what's really exciting is to find those additional use cases. And to be able to go to the retailer or the retailer to go to their finance team and say, this is just a small incremental bump. You've already given the big investment in RFID into our business. You've got source tagged items coming into the stores. You've got handhelds. You've got some infrastructure. For a small incremental lift, you're going to get this huge benefit on the back end. So that incremental lift and not having single purpose purchases, that's hard to say, I think is going to be one thing that we see a significant advantage of this in the market in the coming year.
Yeah, I think we've definitely shifted away from that view of, oh, if we get RFID or really any technology, oh, this department's going to want to put their hand in, and this, oh, it's just going to be, it was kind of a negative, right? Well,
Right.
now we switch, well, wait a minute. No, we can sell this technology to these other departments and then get their buy-in, and it's, we can share the cost. Yeah, I think that just the view of all these technologies has changed so much in the last few years. It's really heartening to see. So,
Absolutely. It reiterated, you mentioned it, I mentioned that the total retail loss, it came up over and over again in the discussion with the retailers.
good.
I think it's not a new concept as we've discussed, but it is new data to that concept. And
Mhm.
I'm excited for being able to pinpoint all those areas in the supply chain. Of course, the exit, but now you start looking at what can you do at their point of receipt? What can you do at point of shipping from the DC to the store? It's just going to make the retailers more effective and do what they want to do better, which is sell more merchandise to their good customers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do their jobs and all those good things. Get
Right.
raises, bonuses.
All those great things, especially this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been another great conversation, Jamie. I appreciate it. And congratulations on another successful meeting. And is it going to be in Bentonville again next year?
We haven't decided. We know we want to change things up a little bit every year. We may change the venue next year. We're probably going to tweak the timing a little bit as well. So stay tuned. We'll be making some announcements here in the coming months.
Awesome. Well, I hope to be able to attend next year's meeting because it looks fabulous.
You have a standing invitation.
Wonderful. Well, it was so good to talk with you, Jamie. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you again down the road.
You as well. Looking forward to it next time.